So, today I want to talk to you a little bit about health expectancy versus life expectancy. Do you know what your health expectancy is? Have you thought about it? Because the truth is, I don't think that we talk about this enough. The value and the importance of prioritizing your health expectancy when thinking about your plans and your future and thinking about what it is that you want to do and what you desire to accomplish. The truth is, life expectancy, thanks to modern medicine, has really increased. And in fact, I think the numbers are that over the past 100 years, the global life expectancy has more than doubled. So, in the area of life expectancy, we're definitely making progress. But the truth is that that has not necessarily been accompanied with an equivalent increase in health expectancy. So, what's happening is that although we are living longer, what that looks like for a lot of people is that there are more years spent with chronic illness and chronic disease and things such as diabetes and heart attacks and strokes and stuff like that, that the total number of years that we are living with illness is actually becoming longer. And this is not a video where I'm trying to make you, you know what I mean, sad or anything of that nature. But I think this is a really relevant topic because I think it's important that we recognize the value of looking at our health span rather than our lifespan. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. That's what I want to talk to you about today, is looking at your health span and calculating that. There is actually a real calculation for determining your health expectancy as opposed to your life expectancy. And also talking about some of the things that you can do now to help to make sure that when you take into consideration what your health expectancy is, that you're able to do the things that you desire to do while you have the health to do it, because it is so important. And so before we get into that, if this is your first time seeing my face, let me just introduce myself to you. My name is Nicole, and I am a former overworked nurse. And I am creating a life that I want to live rather than the one that has been assigned to me. And my dream is to really help you to do the same. A few years ago, back in 2020, I realized that I had a health life expectancy, and that if I was going to be able to do the things that I desire to do, I was going to have to move and shift some things and reprioritize some things in my life so that I would have the time, the health, and the energy to do those things. And so on this channel, I talk about things related to health, wellness, nutrition, and travel, because I believe that health is wealth, and I believe that travel is therapy. And I am helping Black women to help to prioritize and optimize their health, their wellness, in order to travel and enjoy just the healthy years of their life. That's really my goal here, is to help you to create the life you want to live. So if that is something that you're interested in, please go ahead and share this video, put a like, subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know who you are, what you're, trying to accomplish. And just, let's create a dialogue. Let's build a community, because I do believe that it's really important to value our health and to, do the best that we can. So let's get into the topic of today's video. And I do have some notes because honestly, this is something that I am really passionate about. It has really changed my way of thinking, and honestly has changed my lifestyle. Like I said, a few years ago, I changed my life. I was an overworked nurse. I was spending a lot of time working, investing in retirement, trying to plan for my future. But the truth is, something changed when I realized that I only have so much time in terms of my health to do the things that I desire. And I had to shift some things. And I want to share with you some of the ways in which I have begun to create my dream life, and how I am incorporating my dream life into my everyday life. Because I think that that's what's important, right? When you think of the things that you wanted to do, when you think about your dream life, and when you start to visualize what that looks like, I think it's important to begin to take the necessary steps to not put off that dream until the future, until the by and by, right? Until after retirement, but rather to begin to incorporate your dream life into your everyday life to ensure that you have the time, the health, the energy, right? To be able to accomplish those things. And so, yes, I definitely started thinking about health expectancy rather than life expectancy. So I kind of started looking around in my family and just at the people who are around me, and I started looking at what their health expectancy was. So I would encourage you to do the same. Think about your mother, your grandmother, if you have older brothers or older sisters, if you have aunties or uncles or cousins. Kind of look at what has been their health expectancy for the people who are maybe a little bit older than you, or the same age range as you, or whatever the case is. And so for me, yeah, I started looking at these people and I started thinking about the dreams and the desires that I have for me, for my future. And a lot of those at the time was after retirement. And I began to realize that when I looked at the health expectancy of the people that were around me, who shared my genetics, right? Who shared my neighborhood and many of the things that we had in common, what I realized that a lot of the things that I was envisioning for myself, I didn't know that I wasn't confident that I was going to have a good trajectory for my health expectancy to be able to do those things if I waited until that time. And so I calculated my health expectancy, and I know this is going to be different for everyone, but start to think about it, really start to think about it seriously. Try to come up with a number for what your health expectancy is. And yes, there is a scale through the World Health Organization, and they do have a health life expectancy calculator, but I would argue that yeah, you can use the calculator, but also use your real life, right? Because you have relatives in your real life, right, who live in your real situation, in your real neighborhood, with the real risks that you deal with. And that might be a more valid number for you, right? Because definitely there are things that are going to impact our health expectancy, including not only genetics, which is I think about 20%, but also something that we call social determinants of health. And if you've heard of social determinants of health, I'll just pull these up. There's some of the things that we don't as easily have as much control over, such as access to housing, access to food, the environment in which we were born, the things that we're breathing in our air, access to education and resources, access to medical care. So these are some of the things that are going to affect our health expectancy that maybe are not as easily within our control, whereas our genetics also play a role as well. But a lot of the things when we think about health expectancy are going to be things that are not easily within our control. What that means, what does that mean for us? That means that it's important for us to consider that it may be a reality that even with incorporating the things that we know how to incorporate, such as eating well and exercising, which I think we should all do those things. I'm not saying don't do those things, but that there are some things that are gonna affect our health expectancy that are just outside of our control. So the second thing that I did was I started to look at my health expectancy, which let's just say 60 years, I thought, for health expectancy, at least with regard to how I was envisioning what I wanted to do. I saw myself traveling and going to other countries, hiking, dancing, learning new languages. I saw myself, you know what I mean, laid out on the beach, meeting new people, doing a lot of things that would require good health and energy and vitality in general. And I just started imagining myself, and I'm not saying that one can't do those things after a certain age. I definitely have begun to surround myself with a community of wonderful women who are 60 plus, and that they are definitely partaking and enjoying some of these things in their life. And with that being said, I recognize that in my own personal life, that would be very lucky. I would be very lucky and blessed to get to that stage. And the more that I spoke with women who are 65 and 70 and who are really doing the things that I would like to do and that I see myself doing in the future, a lot of them talked about luck. A lot of them talked about how they felt lucky to have gotten to the stage and still be in good health. But I didn't want to really gamble on luck. I don't want to put off my life and hope that just because of luck, I'll get to do the things that I desire. So I started looking at like my 6th decade. I started looking at my life in terms of decades rather than years. I started to imagine what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish during my 4th decade, my 5th decade, and my 6th decade. And I kind of imagined and started thinking of my 6th decade and thought about how I would look back in my 6th decade and what I would want to have prioritized as in my 4th decade, right? So when I was in my 6th decade, I kind of tried to think of how I would have seen my 4th decade and my 5th decade. And what I'm thinking is that I would have wanted myself to live my fullest life, right? I would have wanted to see myself doing the things that I desire while I had the time, the energy, the vitality to continue to do those things. And so, yeah, that's what I started to do. And that really, really got me to starting to restructure and reprioritize my life, to be honest. I also read this book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bonnie Ware. And if you're familiar with that book, then you know Bonnie Ware was a hospice nurse, and she spent time with people at the end of their life. And she took inventory on some of the regrets that these people had in the final stages of living. And I'm going to share with you some of those regrets because I think it's really important when looking at health expectancy to recognize these things. One of the first regrets that Bonnie Ware talked about was that Bonnie Ware shared that was one of the number 1 regrets of the people who were dying was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. So this was the most common regret of all. And what I take away from that is it makes me realize how very important it is to try to honor your dreams, to really try to honor and give value and priority to the things that you are dreaming and desiring to do, and not putting them off until forever, until life gives you permission to finally do those things. Because let me tell you, life may never give you the permission. From the moment that you lose your health, it's too late. Health brings a freedom that very few people realize until they no longer have it. And I can relate with Bonnie Ware in that, because as a nurse, I have seen people lose their health. And that's one of the reasons why I started this channel, to be honest, because I realize that you and I have a freedom that sometimes we don't recognize because we have our health. And I think we underestimate the value of our health until we lose it. The second regret of the dying in that book was, I wish that I hadn't worked so hard. So in this book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, the people, they never looked back on their life and wished that they had worked more, worked harder, or spent more time in the office, right? They wished that they hadn't worked so hard. So I really started thinking about that. Thinking about ways that I could simplify my life, my lifestyle, and I have really significantly simplified my life, sold my house, really cut down on a lot of the things that weren't my personal priorities in order to begin investing in the things that I value, such as travel. and such as just having free time, right? Free time just to think and to do nothing and just to be me, to explore who I am, and just to have the time to listen to my body and to rest when I need to not be constantly busy and occupied. The third regret of the dying in this book was, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. So in this book, a lot of the people who were dying had realized that they had spent a lot of time suppressing their real feelings in order to protect the feelings of others, in order to keep the peace, in order to not upset people. And as a result, they settled for a mediocre existence and never became who they were truly capable of becoming. Many developed illnesses relating to the bitterness and the resentment that they carried as a result of suppressing their feelings. So to me, this is very real, that if you deny yourself who you are, if you deny yourself the opportunities to really invest in who you believe yourself to be, that can definitely lend itself to you regretting that in the future. We truly can't control the reactions of others. However, we can control ourselves. We can control what we decide to do, what we decide to say, how we choose to respond in situations. And furthermore, we can put effort into not dimming our light and not hiding who we are, not hiding the value that we bring to a situation, not hiding our intellect or our quirkiness or our weirdness, that's really truly a part of who we are, and that is okay. The fourth regret of the dying is that I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And this for me is just so valuable, and I've really been working on putting effort into building friendships over these last few years, because I realized that was an area in my life that I was personally lacking and could benefit from, because I was giving so much time to work and to serving in various capacities that it came at the expense of really building valuable friendships. And in this season of my life, in this fourth decade of my life, I'm prioritizing building relationship, friends, and hopefully setting myself up so that in the future I will have a community, I will have friends, people who can guide me, lead me, speak into my life in ways that are valuable, and hopefully that I can do the same. The fifth regret of the dying was, I wish that I had let myself be happier. I wish that I had let myself be happier. Can you imagine? This really hit home for me, because sometimes we are so busy and preoccupied with the things of life, with the accomplishments of life, that we don't realize that we are not letting ourselves be happy. And when I kind of restructured my life in a way to have free time, I started to realize that I was, in a way, depriving myself of happiness. I was always willing to give up my happiness to do other things, right? My happiness was like the least of my priorities. At least at that time, I believed that happiness wasn't that important, but that was more important, was to do everything else for everybody else, right? So I think what I have learned over the last few years, that happiness is really, really important, and that it's important to honor that. It just makes me think of a scripture that was really important to me for many years, and it's God will give you the desires of your heart. And for many years, I thought that scripture was about me desiring something and God being able to give it to me. But when I started having free time and I started spending time with myself, I started to think of that differently. I started to think of that where I had desires, and I started to realize that these desires didn't come from nowhere. And I started to realize that these desires that I had, they were given to me by God. I had a desire to travel. I had a desire to learn new languages. I had a desire to see the world, to meet people, to build friendship, to to build community. And I realized that these were desires that God had given me, and that he hadn't given them to me for no reason. That clearly that there was a reason that he had given me these desires. And I believe that that reason is to pursue them. And I believe that if you have that desire, right? So if you have a desire to write, to travel, to create art, to paint, to sew, whatever it is that you have the desire, I believe that it's given to you for a purpose. And it's not just to lay dormant and unexplored. It's really given to you so that you can have that opportunity to use it. It's part of who you are. It's part of your uniqueness. It's part of what makes you beautiful, right? And unlike anyone else. And I think the other thing that I would add is that number 4, I started to allocate a value system for the people that I was trying to please. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but let me just give you an example. I started to realize that a lot of the motivation for me doing a lot of the things that I was doing was because of how it affected other people as opposed to how it affected me directly. I realized that I was often prioritizing the needs and the values of others over the needs and values that I had for myself, and that I actually started to realize that I hadn't spent a lot of time really determining what were my own personal needs. And interestingly, if you're a Black woman in particular, but if you're a woman in general, sometimes we don't realize that because of our culture, we've been trained to value what people tell us to do, right? The priority of our lives has been given over to other people to tell us, right? Whether it be from an authority figure, a father, a pastor, or someone else, right? The Bible, God, whoever. But ultimately, a lot of women have not been really trained that what you think about yourself is just as valuable. So I started to learn how to allocate value to certain people in my life. And I do want you to pay attention to this because I think it's important, although I might be having a challenge explaining it. But let me just give you an example. So for example, what I realized was that I started to give, like, from 0 to 10, I started to give kind of like the people in my life a number, right? So like people who were 0 to 3s were the people that didn't really have any real impact in my life. Like they were people who knew me or who knew of me, but didn't really have any say-so in my day-to-day functioning, right? They really didn't care one way or another. Like my neighbors down the street, the lady who made my coffee, like these were level 1, level 2 people. What that helped me do, and then like, for example, my people who were like my 9s and 10s were people who were really close to me, who really knew me to the core, right? Who understood me, who I could talk to and share things with in depth. With that being said, what I realized is I also had to assign myself as a number 10 in my life in terms of who had the most say, right? So what that meant was I had to reorganize my life in a way that the people who were the 0s, the 1s, the 2s, and 3s, that when they had stuff to say about what I was doing or what my priorities were, I really didn't even give much emotional energy to thinking about it, to be honest. Like I let that slide off my back. Whereas, people who are higher value, the 4s and the 5s, I might give a little bit of emotional energy to, but to be honest, it's more those 8s, 9s, and 10s that are going to that I'm really going to contemplate what the things that they're saying and how I'm going to value those things in my life. But again, I'm a number 10 in my life, which means I'm not going to take what a number 1 or a number 2 person or a number 3 in my life would say and give it number 10 energy. I know myself better than anybody else knows me. I know what's best for me more than anybody else knows what's best for me. And yes, I'm going to listen to and maybe contemplate and give some energy to the 9s and 10s, but I'm not going to give that kind of energy to the 0s, the 1s and the 2s, the neighbor, the coffee lady. So if I say, hey, I'm traveling to so-and-so country, no, I've never been there, yes, I'm going solo, and if one of my 1s and 2s in my life, a neighbor down the street, the kid who doesn't know me, it's like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you ever do that? That sounds crazy. I'm not even going to give that emotional energy. I'm not going to allow that to be something that I'm even going to take into consideration when making a decision. I'm not going to allow that to deter me or to one way or another for what I'm going to do. It's going to be the 10s, you know, the 8s, 9s, and 10s. And with that being said, even if the people who are 8s, 9s, and 10s, I'm not necessarily going to put them over me because I'm a 10 in my life, right? So I always come back to myself as the most valid, reputable, knowledgeable voice to speak into my own life. I'm not going to allow other people to speak into my life with greater value, with greater depth, and with greater validity and reliability, emotional energy than I'm going to speak into my own life. I'm just not going to do it. And so how does that relate to health expectancy? It relates to health expectancy because it helped me to refocus what I determined was most important for me to live a healthy life. And what I came up with wasn't maybe what others would say is most important. I decided that travel was an important part of my wellness plan. I started to incorporate and allocate my resources to being able to incorporate travel into my life because I determined that it was a part of my wellness plan. No one was standing by to tell me that this is what I needed to do in order to be healthy. I started allocating my time, my effort, my energy into resources, into spending time resting and doing the things that I enjoy because I think that they are important. And so with that being said, I know this is getting long, so let me wrap things up here. I think it's really important for us to really think about our health expectancy more than our life expectancy. How are we going to use our healthy years to incorporate our dreams into our life and not put them off? That's definitely something that I've been working on, and I'd love to share more about that journey with you. But for today, that is all that I have. So until next time, please leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel, share this video with someone that you know, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.